Hey guys, in today's lecture, we'll be discussing sonnet number 33 written by William Shakespeare, beginning with the line, "Full many a glorious morning have I seen." Now, before moving on with the interpretation of the sonnet, let's discuss Shakespearean sonnets. Now, Shakespeare's sonnets are 154 poems written by William Shakespeare. So these are 154 poems written in sonnet format by William Shakespeare. The number is important, 154. And they deal with themes such as passage of time, love, beauty, and mortality. All but two of the poems written by William Shakespeare were published in the year 1609 in a quarto edition titled Shakespeare's Sonnets Never Before Imprinted. So almost all, save for two sonnets, were published in the year 1609 in a quarto edition titled Shakespeare's Sonnets Never Before Imprinted. And sonnet number 138 and 144 had already been printed or published, and it was published in the year 1599 in a miscellany titled The Passionate Pilgrim. So 1609 ആദ്യമായിട്ട് ഷേക്സ്പിയറിൻ സോണറ്റ്സ് പബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് ആയപ്പോൾ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഷേക്സ്പിയർ സോണറ്റ്സ് പബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് ആയപ്പോൾ അതിന്റെ ടൈറ്റിൽ ആയിരുന്നു ഷേക്സ്പിയർ സോണറ്റ്സ് നെവർ ബിഫോർ ഇംപ്രിന്റഡ്. But before that, already two sonnets were published in the year 1599 in a collection. Miscellany means a collection of poems. So in a collection of poems entitled The Passionate Pilgrim. Now the quarto edition titled Shakespeare's Sonnets Never Before Imprinted ends with a poem, A Lover's Complaint, and this Lover's Complaint is a narrative poem. It's not a sonnet, it is a narrative poem, and it has 47 lines in it, and it is written in rhyme royale. All the other Shakespearean sonnets are written in Shakespearean stanza, whereas this particular poem is a narrative poem and it was written in rhyme royale. Now, rhyme royale was a rhyming stanza which was introduced to English poetry by Chaucer, and later on it was adapted by James I of Scotland. James I of Scotland also wrote in rhyme royale, and hence it came to be known by the name rhyme royale because it was used by the king himself. Right. So that's a bit of a history. Now, coming on to Shakespeare's sonnets. Shakespeare's sonnets are divided into different categories. Now, sonnet number 1 to 126 is dedicated to the fair youth. Now, the fair youth is an unnamed young man who appears in Shakespeare's sonnets, and sonnets 1 to 126 is addressed to him. And again, in this sonnets, from sonnet number 1 to 126, sonnet 1 to 17 are titled as procreation sonnets, because in these sonnets, Shakespeare asked the fair youth to get married and have children, to procreate children, so that he could pass on his beauty to his heirs, right? So in sonnets 1 to 17, Shakespeare asked the fair youth to get married and beget progeny. That is why it is known by the name procreation sonnet. And why should the fair youth get married? Because the fair youth should be able to pass on his genes to the next generation. That is why Shakespeare asks him to get married and have children. Now, sonnets 18 to 126 discusses about the power of poetry and how pure love could defeat death and even enemies and death. Sonnets 79 to 89, again, that comes under the category of fair youth sonnets, also addresses the rival poet. Now, the rival poet is considered to be Christopher Marlowe or George Chapman or all those poets who lived in Shakespeare's time period and who were contemporaries of Shakespeare. Sonnets 127 to 154 is addressed to a dark lady, and this dark lady is a woman. As the name itself indicates, she might have been an African. She is black, or she has a dusky skin tone, and though she is portrayed as an epitome of beauty, according to Elizabethan standards, our dark lady was a very dull figure, but still she is portrayed by Shakespeare as a beautiful woman. Now, sonnets 153 to 154 are dedicated to Cupid, or are addressed to Cupid, the love god. Now, this is important. Do learn this by heart. For the exams, they might ask this question. Now, moving on to the form of Shakespeare's sonnets. Now, Shakespearean sonnet is written in 4 quatrains and a couplet. What do you mean by a quatrain? Quatrains are 4-line stanzas, and Shakespearean sonnets has 3 4-line stanzas and a concluding couplet. Let's take a look at the sonnet that we have to learn. So here, full many a glorious morning have I seen, flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye, kissing with the golden face the meadows green, gliding pale streams with heavenly alchemy. So here, these are 4 lines. Stanzas. Again, we have 4-line stanzas, right? Next is another rhyme scheme. Anon permit the basest clouds to ride, with ugly rack on his celestial face, and from the forlorn world his visage hide, stealing unseen to west with this disgrace. Again, these are again 4-line stanzas which are entirely different from the first 4 lines, because the first 4 lines had the rhyme scheme A, B, A, B. If you take a close look, seen, green, I and alchemy, I and alchemy, again, they are partial rhymes, but still we can consider them as rhyming words, right? So, seen and green, I and alchemy, right? Then we have A, B, and then we have C, D, because here there is ride, C, then here it is hide, so C, in between there is a D, face and disgrace, so C, D. Then we have E, F, shine, brew, mine, now. Again, these endings or these rhymes are different. Shine, mine, brew, now. So again, so the rhyme scheme here is A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. These are the concluding couplets, right? G, disdaineth and staineth. And again, look at these lines. These are 4-line stanzas. 1, first quatrain. Again, these are 4-line stanzas, second quatrain. And then you have the third 4-line stanza, which is the third quatrain. That is why we see 3 quatrains, 3 4-line stanzas and a couplet. The final 2 lines are couplets. They rhyme with each other, disdaineth and staineth. So this is the form of the Shakespearean stanza. Getting back to the notes. So 3 4-line stanzas called quatrains, and then there is a final concluding couplet. And it is composed in iambic pentameter lines. Pentameter means a line containing 5 metrical feet. A line containing 5 metrical feet. So, pentameter means a line containing 5 metrical feet, and we have here iambic pentameter lines. Iambic means here the syllable comes like this, da, dum, that is unstressed syllable followed by stressed syllable, da, dum. So there is a unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Let's take a look at it and see how it goes. Full many a glorious morning have I seen. Full many a glorious morning have I seen. Flatter the mountain tops with sovereign ISO, unstressed followed by a stress syllable. Full many, then there is a stress there, again unstressed, glorious, there is stress, morning, there is unstressed, have, again stressed, I, again unstressed, seen, stressed, like that it goes. Full many a glorious morning have I seen. Full many glorious morning have I seen. So it goes like that. Anyway, it comes in the form of unstressed followed by stress syllable. So it goes like da dum, it goes like that. So this is how the rhyme scheme goes, and that is the rhyme scheme. That's all about the rhyme scheme. And another thing that you need to take note about Shakespeare's sonnets is that after the third quatrain, there will be a turn of thought which is named as volta. So there will be a turn of thought and the mood of the poem shifts here. After the third quatrain, the general mood of the poem shifts. If it was a happy poem, then it would turn into a sad tone. If it was a very sad poem, then it would have some kind of a reassurance and then it would turn into a happy mood. So after the third quatrain, the general mood of the poem shifts, and this is known as a turn of thought or a volta. And here the poet may express a sudden revelation or an epiphany. Epiphany is a sudden moment of revelation. The poet might have an epiphany, a sudden moment of realization, whereby the general mood of the poem will also change from being very sad and somber to a happy one, or from very happy poem to a very sad one, because of that sudden moment of realization. Pettannoru realization poetnundam about life in general, and then there is a turn in thought. So this happens after the third quatrain. So in the third quatrain, to be precise, after the first two quatrain, in the third quatrain there is a change of thought, often marked by a caesura or a stop or a full stop, right? Now there are exceptions to these form. Not all Shakespearean sonnets follow these forms. Some might differ. For example, sonnet number 99 has 15 lines. So usually sonnets have 14 lines, but here sonnet number 99 has over 15 lines. Sonnet number 126 has 6 couplets and 2 blank lines which are marked in italics. So usually sonnets, especially Shakespearean sonnets, have a concluding couplet, but sonnet number 126 has 6 couplets, and along with that there is also a blank line which is indicated by italicized brackets, right? And then you have sonnet number 145, which is written in iambic tetrameter lines. Tetrameter means 3 feet in one line. You can find 3 feet in one line. So that's all about the form of Shakespearean sonnets. Again, Shakespearean sonnets are written in the form of four quatrains and a couplet. Now, it is composed in iambic pentameter lines, and iambic pentameter lines are also used in almost all Shakespearean plays which are written in blank verse. Iambic means there is an unstressed syllable which is followed by a stressed syllable. The rhyme scheme of a Shakespearean sonnet is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Now, the third quatrain often marks a turn in the poet's thought, and the general mood of the poem also shifts as the poet expresses a sudden revelation, or there is a moment of epiphany and the poet expresses it. So there is a sudden moment of great realization. So there is a pause or a caesura which marks this sudden change that happens towards the end of the second quatrain, and from the third quatrain there is a change in thought, right? And the exceptions to this form appear in sonnets 99, 126 and 145. Now, in the previous section, we discussed about the various categories into which the Shakespearean sonnets are being categorized. Like some of these sonnets are addressed to the fair youth, some of them are addressed to the dark lady, then some are addressed to Cupid, and in some we can see the presence of a rival poet. Now we shall take a look at the identity of these people. Who were they, right? So all that we have are possible assumptions on the identity of these people whom we see in Shakespeare's sonnets. So fair youth is variously identified as Henry Wriothesley, the third Earl of Southampton. Now Henry Wriothesley was once Shakespeare's patron, and then there is another contender for this position, and that is William Herbert, the third Earl of Pembroke. And William Herbert was also Shakespeare's patron, though he was a later patron. So Henry Wriothesley was the first patron, or he was once Shakespeare's patron, and he was the third Earl of Southampton. And then you have another contender for this position, and that is William Herbert, and he was the third Earl of Pembroke, and he was also a later patron of Shakespeare. You know what a patron is, right? In those days, writers wrote for the patrons. So the patrons would give them some amount of money, and the writers would use that money for writing poems and for publishing them, or for staging plays, etc. Now, we know that Shakespeare dedicated some of his poems to a mysterious Mr. W.H. So Shakespeare's sonnets are dedicated to one Mr. W.H., whom he named as the only begetter of his sonnets. So in his sonnets, or at the beginning of his sonnets, he has written that he is dedicating these sonnets to a Mr. W.H. and the identity of the person is not revealed there. It's just written Mr. W.H. and that is why people thought that he might be writing about Henry Wriothesley or William Herbert, because they were his patrons after all. So William Herbert might be the W.H. or it might be Henry Wriothesley, right? Because both of them had the initials W.H. Now, there is another character that is appearing in most of these sonnets, and that is the Dark Lady. And the Dark Lady is variously identified as Amelia Lanier and Mary Fitton, two women. And the Dark Lady is portrayed as a dusky woman who goes against all the beauty standards in Elizabethan age, but still Shakespeare considers her as beautiful. Then we have the rival poet, and it is considered that many of the Shakespeare's contemporaries can be considered as the rival poet, and some think that it is a direct reference to Christopher Marlowe or George Chapman. Both of them were playwrights during the time of Shakespeare. Another interesting fact about the fair youth is that some of the scholars believe that Shakespeare had a kind of a homosexual relationship with this fair youth. And it is also said that he had some kind of a relationship with the Dark Lady too, because he addresses the Dark Lady as his mistress. So it is said that he might have been romantically involved with the fair youth as well as the Dark Lady. And then there is again a suggestion that the Dark Lady might have fallen in love with the fair youth. So Shakespeare might have felt disgruntled by this entire thing, because he was in love with the fair youth and at the same time was in love with the Dark Lady. And some scholars suggest that Dark Lady might have fallen in love with the fair youth and fair youth might have reciprocated, and Shakespeare might have hated it, right? And this poem is also a testimony to that, because there is a reference to dark clouds, and many scholars point out that it must be the Dark Lady. The reference to the dark clouds here might be a suggestion to the Dark Lady. So that was a brief introduction. I hope that you were able to take it down, take all the important points down. So we shall discuss the poem in detail in the next lecture, so stay tuned.